There's a woman you've met before. Maybe you've seen her in passing, felt her energy shift the atmosphere in a room, or watched as she navigated chaos with an almost supernatural grace. She doesn't demand attention, yet you can't look away. She doesn't seek validation, yet she inspires it. Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, spent his lifetime studying the human psyche, and embedded within his vast body of work is a profound understanding of what he called individuation, the journey toward becoming your most authentic self. But here's what most people miss. Jung's insights weren't just about humanity in general. They revealed something extraordinary about the feminine psyche, about women who undergo a profound awakening that sets them apart from the masses. Today, we're diving deep into the 7 personality traits of the awakened woman according to Carl Jung's psychological framework. These aren't just characteristics, they're transformative markers of a consciousness that only a rare few achieve. And if you're watching this video, there's a good chance you're either on this journey yourself or you're about to begin it. So make yourself comfortable. Grab your journal if you have one. We're going to explore territory that might challenge you, inspire you, and quite possibly change the way you see yourself forever. Let's begin. Understanding the awakened woman. Before we dive into the 7 traits, we need to establish a foundation. What exactly do we mean by an awakened woman in the Jungian sense? Carl Jung believed that every human being carries within them both conscious and unconscious elements. Most people, he argued, live their entire lives never venturing into the depths of their unconscious mind. They operate on autopilot, guided by societal conditioning, inherited beliefs, and the expectations of others. But then there are those rare individuals, and we're focusing on women today who dare to descend into that darkness. They confront their shadows. They integrate their contradictions. They emerge transformed. Jung called this process individuation, and it's not for the faint of heart. It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to shatter every false version of yourself you've constructed over the years. The awakened woman has undergone this alchemical transformation. She's not perfect, far from it, but she's authentic. She's whole. She's integrated. And that makes her rare, powerful, and often misunderstood. Now you might be wondering, how do I know if I'm an awakened woman, or if I'm on this path? That's exactly what we're about to explore. But before we continue, if you're finding value in this deep dive into Jungian psychology and feminine awakening, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It tells YouTube to share this content with more people who are ready for this message. And trust me, this information needs to reach those who are seeking it. All right, let's dive into the first trait. Trait 1. She has integrated her shadow self. The first trait of the awakened woman is perhaps the most challenging and the most transformative. She has integrated her shadow self. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Jungian psychology, the shadow is not what you might think. It's not simply the bad parts of you. The shadow, according to Jung, is everything about yourself that you've rejected, repressed, or denied. It's the parts of you that society told you were unacceptable, the desires you learned to hide, the anger you were taught to suppress, the ambition you were told was unfeminine. Here's the profound truth. Your shadow contains not just your darkness, but also your disowned light. Many women have been conditioned to minimize their brilliance, to shrink their power, to dim their radiance because it made others uncomfortable. That suppressed magnificence, it's living in your shadow too. Think about the woman who was always praised for being nice and agreeable. Maybe that's you. You learned early that conflict was bad, that asserting your needs was selfish, that expressing anger made you difficult. So, you buried those parts of yourself deep down. You became the peacekeeper, the one who always compromised, the one who put everyone else first. But here's what happens. Those rejected parts don't disappear. They leak out in passive-aggressive comments, in chronic resentment, in unexplained exhaustion, or in sudden explosive reactions that seem to come out of nowhere. The awakened woman has done the terrifying work of turning toward her shadow instead of running from it. She's looked at her capacity for jealousy, for rage, for selfishness, for manipulation. And instead of judging these parts or trying to eliminate them, she's understood them. She's integrated them. Integration doesn't mean acting out every impulse. It means acknowledging these aspects exist, understanding where they come from, and choosing consciously how to channel their energy. Let me give you a concrete example. An awakened woman might recognize her jealousy when a friend achieves something she desires. Instead of suppressing this feeling or feeling guilty about it, she sits with it. She asks, "What is this jealousy trying to tell me about my own unmet desires? What action do I need to take in my own life?" She transforms that shadow energy into fuel for her own growth. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The awakened woman has made her darkness conscious. And paradoxically, this is what makes her so radiant. She's no longer fragmented, no longer exhausting herself by maintaining a false persona. She's whole, and that wholeness is magnetic. Now, I want to be clear about something. Shadow work is not a one-time event. It's not something you do once and check off your list. The awakened woman understands that integration is an ongoing practice. New layers reveal themselves as she evolves. She remains committed to the process. And here's something beautiful that happens when a woman integrates her shadow. She stops projecting it onto others. She stops seeing enemies everywhere because she's befriended the enemy within. She stops attracting the same painful patterns because she's no longer unconsciously seeking external situations to mirror her internal conflicts. She becomes free. So ask yourself, what parts of yourself have you disowned? What emotions have you deemed unacceptable? What desires have you suppressed? The awakened woman knows these are not obstacles to her spiritual growth. They're gateways. Take a moment here if you need to. This first trait alone is a lifetime of work. But if you're still with me, you're ready for the second trait. Trait 2. She trusts her intuition above all external authority. The second trait of the awakened woman is her unwavering trust in her intuition above all external authority. Now, this is where the awakened woman truly sets herself apart from the crowd. We live in a world that constantly tells women not to trust themselves. Trust the expert. Trust the algorithm. Trust the influencer. Trust the guru. Trust the system. Trust anyone and everyone except your own inner knowing. Jung understood something profound about intuition. He identified it as one of the 4 main psychological functions alongside thinking, feeling, and sensing. But more than that, he recognized that intuition is our direct line to the unconscious, to the collective wisdom that transcends our individual experience. The awakened woman has reclaimed her intuitive knowing. And I need to be specific here because intuition has been commercialized and watered down in recent years. We're not talking about impulsive decisions or wishful thinking. We're talking about that deep, cellular knowing that arises from your core, the kind that your rational mind might argue against, but your soul recognizes as truth. Let me paint you a picture. An awakened woman is offered an opportunity that looks perfect on paper. The job pays well. The title is impressive. Everyone tells her she'd be crazy not to take it. But something inside her says, no, not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet, persistent knowing that this path isn't hers. The unawakened woman might override this intuition. She might think, who am I to turn this down? Maybe I'm just being scared. Maybe I'm self-sabotaging. She takes the job. And 6 months later, she's miserable, wondering how she ended up so far from herself. The awakened woman trusts that quiet no, she doesn't need to justify it to others. She doesn't need 3 logical reasons and a pro-con list. She honors that inner compass even when it makes no external sense. And time and again, she witnesses how that trust opens doors she couldn't have imagined. Jung wrote about the concept of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem to defy logical explanation. The awakened woman is fluent in the language of synchronicity because she's paying attention. She notices the patterns, the signs, the subtle communications from her unconscious and the universe at large. But here's what's challenging about this trait. Our society is not set up to honor feminine intuition. In fact, it's actively suppressed. Women's intuition has been mocked as women's hysteria throughout history. We've been told we're too emotional or irrational when we operate from this deeper knowing. The awakened woman has reclaimed this as her superpower. She understands that her intuition isn't separate from her intelligence. It's a form of intelligence that our rational, patriarchal culture hasn't learned to value. Think about our ancestors. In indigenous cultures around the world, women were the medicine keepers, the wisdom keepers, the seers. They were consulted for their intuitive knowing. They communed with the unseen realms. They understood the language of dreams, symbols, and omens. The awakened woman is reclaiming this ancient lineage. She might do this through dream work, through meditation, through spending time in nature, through creative practices that bypass the rational mind. She's rebuilding the atrophied muscle of intuitive perception. Now, let's talk about how this shows up in practical, everyday ways. The awakened woman might feel compelled to take a different route home and later discover there was an accident on her usual path. She might feel a strong urge to reach out to someone, only to find they desperately needed support in that moment. She might walk into a room and immediately sense the emotional undercurrents that others are oblivious to. She's developed what Jung called active imagination, the ability to engage with the unconscious while remaining conscious. She's in dialogue with deeper parts of herself and with the collective wisdom that connects us all. But here's the crucial distinction. The awakened woman's intuition isn't about ego or control. She's not trying to predict or manipulate outcomes. She's simply in flow with what is. She trusts the process. She surrenders to the wisdom that's greater than her small self. This trust and intuition also means she's learned to distinguish between the voice of fear and the voice of knowing. Fear screams, catastrophizes, spirals. Intuition whispers, persists, remains steady. The awakened woman has learned to recognize the difference. She's also comfortable with the paradox that she doesn't need to understand why her intuition is guiding her in a particular direction. She's released the need to have everything figured out before she takes a step. She knows that the path reveals itself as she walks it. I'll share something Jung said that's particularly relevant here. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. The awakened woman has stopped following everyone else's recipes. She's writing her own, guided by that inner compass that never lies. So reflect on this. How often do you override your intuition to please others or to appear logical? When was the last time you honored a knowing that you couldn't explain? The awakened woman trusts herself first, and the evidence of that trust shows up everywhere in her life. Ready for trait number 3? Trait 3. She embraces her animus, the sacred masculine within. The third trait of the awakened woman brings us to one of Jung's most fascinating concepts. She has embraced her animus, the sacred masculine within. Now, this is where Jung's psychology gets really interesting and For some, a bit controversial. Jung believed that every woman carries within her an inner masculine principle, which he called the animus, just as every man carries an inner feminine principle, the anima. This isn't about gender roles or biological sex. This is about psychological energies, archetypes, complementary forces that exist within every human being, regardless of gender identity. The animus represents the logical, assertive, structured, penetrating, focused aspects of consciousness. It's the part of a woman that can make decisive choices, set boundaries, pursue goals with singular focus, speak with authority, and take up space in the world without apology. In an unawakened woman, the animus might be underdeveloped, leading to passive behavior, difficulty making decisions, inability to assert boundaries, or constantly deferring to others. Or it might be possessed by the animus, leading to rigid thinking, harsh judgment, cutting communication, and an over-identification with masculine qualities at the expense of her feminine essence. The awakened woman has integrated her animus. She's in relationship with this inner masculine energy. She can access its gifts without being overtaken by it. She can be both receptive and assertive, soft and strong, intuitive and strategic, nurturing and ambitious. Let me give you a vivid example of what this looks like in real life. An awakened woman has a vision for a creative project. Her feminine energy bursts the vision. It comes through her like a download, full of possibility and feeling. But then she activates her animus to bring structure to that vision. She creates a plan, sets deadlines, allocates resources, makes strategic decisions. She doesn't wait for someone else to manifest her vision for her. She takes purposeful action. Or consider boundaries. The healthy feminine is naturally giving, nurturing, connecting. But without a developed animus, this can become self-sacrificing martyrdom. The awakened woman uses her animus to protect her feminine essence. She says no without guilt. She guards her energy like the precious resource it is. She knows that her capacity to give comes from her fullness, not from her emptiness. Jung warned about what he called the negative animus, that harsh, critical inner voice that many women know all too well. It's that voice that says, "You're not good enough. You'll never succeed. Who do you think you are?" This is the animus in its destructive form, turned against the woman herself. The awakened woman has transformed this critical voice. She's learned to work with her animus as an ally, not an enemy. When that voice speaks now, it's with constructive feedback, not cruel judgment. It says, "This isn't your best work. I know you're capable of more," or, "This person is violating your boundaries. It's time to speak up." There's another dimension to this that's particularly relevant in our current cultural moment. For generations, women were told that to succeed in a man's world, they had to essentially become men, suppress their feminine qualities, adopt masculine communication styles, compete rather than collaborate, hide any sign of softness or vulnerability. Many women did this. They achieved impressive external success. But inside, they felt disconnected, exhausted, inauthentic. They'd amputated half of themselves to fit into a system that wasn't designed for wholeness. The awakened woman refuses this bargain. She brings her full self to everything she does. Yes, she accesses her animus to navigate structures, to negotiate, to lead, to build. But she doesn't abandon her feminine essence in the process. She doesn't pretend that intuition, emotion, and relationality are weaknesses. She integrates both. And this is revolutionary. This is what makes her threatening to systems that require fragmentation. She won't diminish herself. She won't split herself in half. She insists on her wholeness. Jung spoke about the hieros, gamos, the sacred marriage, which occurs within the psyche when masculine and feminine energies unite. This internal union is what the awakened woman has achieved or is actively cultivating. She's no longer at war with herself. She's no longer rejecting parts of herself to appease external expectations. I want to share something subtle, but profound that happens. When a woman integrates her animus, she stops seeking completion through external masculine figures. So many women unconsciously look for men to provide what they're underdeveloped. Animus should provide direction, protection, decisiveness, structure. But the awakened woman has developed these capacities within herself. This doesn't mean she doesn't desire partnership. It means she comes to partnership as a whole being, not as a fragment seeking completion. She chooses relationships from desire, not from need. This changes everything about her relationships. She's no longer attracted to men who want to save her or fix her because she doesn't need saving or fixing. She's no longer willing to play small so her partner can feel big. She seeks equals who can match her wholeness with their own. There's also a fascinating connection between the animus and a woman's creative and intellectual life. Jung believed that the animus is the gateway to a woman's creative spirit. When the animus is healthy and integrated, it helps her give form to her creative visions. It helps her articulate her ideas with clarity and conviction. It helps her believe in her own authority. Think about the women throughout history who've made extraordinary contributions to art, science, philosophy, politics. They all had to develop strong, integrated animus energy to persist against the tremendous resistance they faced. They had to believe in themselves when the entire world told them they shouldn't. The awakened woman is their heir. She carries this torch forward. So consider, how developed is your inner masculine? Can you make decisions without endless deliberation? Can you set and maintain boundaries? Can you pursue your ambitions without guilt? Or do you find yourself waiting for permission, waiting for someone else to validate your choices, waiting for someone else to protect your energy? The awakened woman waits for no one. She is both the dreamer and the builder, the oracle and the warrior, the poet and the architect. Let's continue to trait number 4, where we'll explore another dimension of her extraordinary consciousness. Trait 4. She has faced her existential aloneness. The 4th trait of the awakened woman is one of the most challenging to confront. She has faced her existential aloneness. This is where we venture into territory that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Jung understood something that terrifies the ego. At our deepest core, each of us is fundamentally alone. We arrive in this world alone, we leave it alone, and the journey of becoming ourselves is one we must walk alone. Now, before you think this is depressing or nihilistic, stay with me. Because what Jung recognized and what the awakened woman has discovered is that confronting this existential aloneness is actually the gateway to authentic connection and profound freedom. Most people's relationships are actually strategies to avoid feeling this aloneness. They merge with others, lose themselves in others, become addicted to validation from others, all to escape the terror of their own separate existence. Jung called this participation. Mystique, a state of unconscious, psychological fusion with others. But here's the problem. When you're running from your aloneness, you can never truly connect. You're too busy clinging, controlling, manipulating, performing all desperate attempts to ensure you're not abandoned to face yourself. The awakened woman has stopped running. She's turned and faced the abyss of her own solitary existence. And in doing so, she's discovered something miraculous. She's sufficient unto herself, complete in her own being, not in an arrogant, superior way, but in a deeply grounded, peaceful way. Let me describe what this looks like in practical terms. The awakened woman can be alone without being lonely. In fact, she craves solitude. She needs time away from others not because she's antisocial, but because she's in relationship with herself. She has rich inner companionship. She doesn't need constant entertainment or distraction. She doesn't need to fill every moment with noise or activity. She can sit with herself in silence and not experience it as punishment. She's comfortable in her own skin, in her own mind, in her own soul. This is so rare in our hyper-connected, constantly distracted world. Most people will do anything to avoid being alone with themselves. They'll scroll endlessly, binge watch, stay in toxic relationships, maintain shallow friendships, overwork anything to avoid the confrontation with their own being. But the awakened woman has done the opposite. She's befriended her solitude. She's used it as a crucible for transformation. She's discovered that only in solitude can you hear your authentic voice beneath all the noise of conditioning and expectation. Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding certain views which others find inadmissible." The awakened woman knows this loneliness intimately. She's experienced the isolation that comes from seeing things others don't see, from valuing things others don't value, from questioning things others accept without thought. She's felt the pain of being misunderstood, of being called too intense or too deep or too much. But instead of diminishing herself to fit in, she's embraced her differentness. She's accepted that her path is hers alone, that her journey toward individuation means sometimes being incomprehensible to those who haven't undertaken the same journey. And paradoxically, this acceptance of her aloneness has made authentic connection possible for the first time, because now when she connects with others, she's not desperately trying to avoid her aloneness. She's choosing connection from a place of wholeness. She can truly see the other person because she's not projecting all her unmet needs onto them. There's another layer to this trait that's particularly relevant for women. Many women have been conditioned to define themselves through relationships: daughter, wife, mother, sister, friend. These roles become their entire identity. And if those relationships change or end, they experience a devastating loss of self. The awakened woman has separated her sense of self from her relationships. She knows who she is independent of anyone else. Yes, she may be a mother, a partner, a friend, but these are expressions of her being, not the totality of it. She has a self that exists before, during, and after any relationship. This doesn't make her cold or disconnected. Actually, it makes her more capable of genuine intimacy, because she's not clinging out of fear of losing herself. She can merge deeply with another in moments of connection, then return to herself without identity crisis. Jung spoke about the individuation process requiring a going into the desert, a period of withdrawal from the collective, from consensus reality, to discover one's unique truth. The awakened woman has taken this journey, maybe literally through travel, retreat, sabbatical, or metaphorically through internal withdrawal, through questioning everything, through the dark night of the soul. She sat in that desert of her own being. She's faced the silence, the uncertainty, the absence of external validation or guidance. And she's discovered her own unshakable ground. Now I need to address something important here. Facing your existential aloneness is not the same as isolating yourself or pushing people away. The awakened woman isn't a hermit avoiding human contact. She deeply values connection and community. But her connections are now authentic because they're not driven by desperation. She doesn't need relationships, she desires them. There's a crucial difference. Need makes you clingy and controlling. Desire makes you open and generous. She's also able to hold space for others' aloneness. When someone shares their pain with her, she doesn't rush to fix it or to fill the silence with platitudes. She can sit with them in their existential reality because she sat with her own. This is true compassion, not rescuing, but bearing witness. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But he also acknowledged that this privilege comes with a price. You must face your absolute aloneness in the universe. You must take responsibility for your own existence. You can't blame your parents, your trauma, your circumstances, or your bad luck forever. The awakened woman has paid this price. She's taken radical responsibility for her life, her choices, her consciousness. She stopped waiting for someone to save her because she's realized the savior she was waiting for is herself. This is simultaneously the loneliest and the most liberating realization a human being can have. So I ask you, have you faced your existential aloneness? Or are you still running from it into distractions, addictions, codependent relationships, external validation? The awakened woman has stopped running, and in her stillness, she's found her power. Let's move to trait number 5, where we explore how this inner work manifests in the world. Trait 5. She lives from authentic power, not borrowed power. The 5th trait of the awakened woman is that she lives from authentic power, not borrowed power. This distinction is absolutely crucial, and it's something that Jung understood deeply through his work on individuation and the false self. Most people operate from borrowed power their entire lives. They derive their sense of power, worth, and identity from external sources: their job title, their bank account, their appearance, their relationship status, their social media following, their family name, their achievements, their possessions. This is borrowed power. It can be taken away at any moment, and the person who relies on it lives in constant fear of losing it. The awakened woman has undergone a different alchemy. She's discovered her authentic power, the power that comes from who she is, not what she has. The power that comes from her being, not her doing. The power that no external circumstance can diminish, because it's not dependent on external circumstances. Jung wrote extensively about the persona, the social mask we wear to interface with the world. The persona isn't bad. We need it to function in society. But problems arise when we identify completely with our persona, when we believe we are our mask. The unawakened woman might derive all her power from her persona. She's the successful career woman, or the perfect mother, or the beautiful one, or the smart one. Her entire sense of self is wrapped up in this role. And when circumstances challenge that role, she loses her job. Her children grow up. She ages. Someone smarter comes along. She experiences a catastrophic loss of identity. The awakened woman has separated her true self from her persona. She might play these roles skillfully, but she knows they're roles. She's not attached to them. Her sense of power comes from a deeper place, from her connection to her authentic self, from her integration of shadow and light, from her embodiment of her own truth. Let me give you a concrete example of how this shows up. An awakened woman is fired from her job. This is objectively difficult and challenging. But she doesn't fall apart because her entire identity wasn't wrapped up in that job title. She feels the disappointment, processes the loss, and then accesses her authentic power to move forward. She knows her worth isn't determined by whether one company employs her. Contrast this with a woman living from borrowed power in the same situation. She experiences not just disappointment but complete identity crisis. If I'm not the VP of marketing at this company, who am I? Her borrowed power has been taken away, and she has no authentic power to fall back on. Now, let's talk about how this applies to relationships, because this is where it gets really interesting. Many women have been conditioned to derive their power through relationships with powerful men. This is classic borrowed power. Their sense of importance, their access to resources, their social status, all of it comes through their association with someone else. Jung would call this projection of the animus. These women haven't developed their own inner masculine power, so they seek it externally through men. And they pay an enormous price for this. They must constantly please, appease, and maintain that relationship because their power depends on it. The awakened woman doesn't need to borrow power from anyone. She's cultivated her own. She might choose to partner with a powerful person, but that partnership is between two sovereign beings, not between a person and their power source. She doesn't compete with other women for access to powerful men because she's not trying to access power through others. She is powerful in her own right. This changes everything about how she moves through the world. There's another dimension to authentic power that's subtle but profound. The awakened woman understands that true power is generative, not extractive. She doesn't need to take power from others or keep others small to feel big. Her power creates more power. She lifts as she climbs. She mentors. She supports. She celebrates other women's success because it doesn't diminish her own. This is completely different from how power operates in patriarchal structures, where it's a zero-sum game someone has to lose for someone else to win. The awakened woman is creating new paradigms of power. Jung spoke about the self with a capital S, the archetype of wholeness, the God image within the psyche. The awakened woman has connected to her self, and from that connection flows authentic power that is simultaneously humble and mighty. It's humble because she knows this power doesn't belong to her ego. It flows through her, but it's not about her. It's mighty because no external force can touch it. You can't shame it, manipulate it, control it, or diminish it. Let me tell you what authentic power looks like in everyday life. The awakened woman speaks her truth even when her voice shakes. She sets boundaries even when others are displeased. She takes up space even when others subtly signal she shouldn't. She pursues her vision even when others question or criticize. She changes course even when she's invested time and energy in the wrong path. She does all of this not from ego or defiance, but from alignment with her authentic self. And that alignment is unshakable. There's also an important relationship between authentic power and vulnerability. This might seem contradictory, but the awakened woman understands they're actually complementary. True vulnerability requires immense power. It takes authentic power to show up without armor, to admit you don't have all the answers, to ask for help, to say, "I was wrong." The woman operating from borrowed power can never be truly vulnerable, because borrowed power is fragile. It depends on maintaining an image, a facade. But authentic power is secure enough to be honest. The awakened woman can say, "I don't know," without feeling diminished. She can cry without feeling weak. She can change her mind without feeling like a failure. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." The awakened woman enters all her interactions from authentic power, which means she's not trying to dominate or control the outcome. She's present, open, responsive, and paradoxically, this makes her more influential, not less. People can feel authentic power. It's magnetic. It's trustworthy. It doesn't need to announce itself or prove itself. It simply is. So ask yourself, where are you operating from borrowed power? Are you deriving your sense of worth from your job, your relationship status, your appearance, your achievements? What would remain if all of that was stripped away? The awakened woman has done this excavation. She's found her bedrock. And from that foundation, she builds a life that no earthquake can destroy. Now, let's explore the sixth trait, which reveals how the awakened woman navigates the sacred and the mysterious. Trait 6. She has reclaimed her connection to the sacred feminine. The sixth trait of the awakened woman is that she has reclaimed her connection to the sacred feminine. This is where Jung's work intersects with something even more ancient and primal. Jung studied mythology, alchemy, and the world's religious traditions, and he recognized that the feminine principle has been systematically suppressed, denigrated, and banished from our collective consciousness. For thousands of years, patriarchal religious systems have elevated the masculine divine while casting the feminine as dangerous, evil, or simply inferior. The wise woman became the witch. The healer became the heretic. The priestess became the prostitute. The goddess was dethroned, and Mary was given a pedestal, but only as the meek, submissive, desexualized mother. The awakened woman has seen through this spiritual colonization. She's recognized that something essential has been stolen from her and from all of us, and she's engaged in the sacred work of reclamation. Now, let me be clear about what the sacred feminine is and isn't. It's not simply about being nice, nurturing, and passive. That's a patriarchal reduction that has kept women domesticated and controllable. The true sacred feminine is vast, powerful, and multifaceted. She is the creator and the destroyer. She is the virgin and the crone. She is the nurturer and the devourer. She is life force itself in all its wild, untamable glory. Jung recognized this through his study of archetypes. He wrote about the great mother archetype in all its forms, the good mother who nourishes and protects, but also the terrible mother who devours and destroys. He understood that the feminine contains both poles and that true wholeness requires integrating both. The awakened woman has reclaimed a yellel of the sacred feminine, not just the sanitized, acceptable parts. She's reclaimed her rage, the rage of Kali, the Hindu goddess who destroys what needs to die. She's reclaimed her wildness, the untamed nature of Artemis, who runs with the wolves and answers to no man. She's reclaimed her darkness, the underworld wisdom of Persephone, who descends into death and emerges transformed. She's also reclaimed her sexuality as sacred, not shameful. Jung understood that sexuality is spiritual energy, creative life force. But our culture has taught women that their sexuality is either dirty or it exists for male consumption. The awakened woman rejects both narratives. She claims her erotic power as her own as a sacred connection to life, pleasure, creativity, and divine union. Let me give you practical examples of what this reclamation looks like. The awakened woman honors her menstrual cycle as sacred, not as an inconvenience to be suppressed with medication. She tunes into the wisdom of her body's natural rhythms. She recognizes that she's not meant to be the same productive machine every day, that she waxes and wanes like the moon, and there's profound wisdom in those cycles. She might create altars in her home spaces dedicated to beauty, mystery, and the divine feminine. She might work with oracle cards, practice ritual, honor the seasons and cycles of nature. She's not doing this from superstition, but from a deep understanding that these practices reconnect her to ancient wisdom that patriarchal rationalism tried to erase. The awakened woman also recognizes that her creativity is sacred. Jung spoke about the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to generate new symbols, images, and meanings from the unconscious. The awakened woman has activated this function through creative practices that bypass the rational mind: automatic writing, dance, painting, singing, drumming. She understands that when she creates, she's channeling something larger than her individual ego. She's tapping into the collective creative matrix that Jung called the collective unconscious. She's communing with the muse, with the divine, with the source. There's also a profound connection between the sacred feminine and the earth. Indigenous cultures around the world have understood this. The earth is our mother, and we are her children. But modern civilization has severed this connection, treating the earth as a resource to exploit rather than a living being to honor. The awakened woman has renewed her bond with the earth. She spends time in nature not as recreation but as communion. She listens to what the trees, the water, the stones, the animals have to teach her. She recognizes that she's not separate from nature, she is nature. The same intelligence that causes flowers to bloom and rivers to flow is animating her body and soul. This isn't romantic fantasy. This is remembering an ancient knowing that our indigenous ancestors lived by. The awakened woman is reweaving the web that modernity tore apart. Jung also wrote about the hieros gamos, the sacred marriage which we touched on earlier. But there's another layer to this. The awakened woman understands that the ultimate sacred marriage is not just between her inner masculine and feminine, but between herself and the divine. She is the beloved. She is the bride. She is in sacred union with life itself. This gives her an unshakable sense of being held, guided, and loved by something far greater than any human relationship could provide. She doesn't feel abandoned or alone in the universe because she's in constant dialogue with the sacred. Now, I need to address something important. The awakened woman's connection to the sacred feminine is not dogmatic. She's not trading patriarchal religion for matriarchal religion. She's not simply replacing male gods with female goddesses. She's accessing something deeper, the mystical direct experience of the divine that transcends all forms and names. She might work with goddess archetypes because they provide powerful, symbolic containers for different aspects of sacred feminine energy. But she's not worshiping external deities. She's recognizing these energies within herself and within the fabric of reality. Jung spoke about the self as the God image, within the organizing principle of the psyche that reflects the totality of who we are. The awakened woman has contacted herself, and she experiences it as both intimately personal and transcendently universal. This is her connection to the sacred feminine, not as something outside herself, but as her deepest nature. This connection also gives her prophetic vision. And I don't mean fortune-telling. I mean the ability to see what is emerging, to sense the collective currents, to feel the future that wants to be born. Many women who've reclaimed the sacred feminine speak of having visions, receiving downloads, channeling information that seems to come from beyond their conscious awareness. Jung would understand this as the collective unconscious speaking, through them ancient wisdom, evolutionary intelligence, the psyche's innate movement, toward wholeness expressing itself through those attuned enough to receive it. The awakened woman trusts these transmissions. She's become a vessel for something sacred to move through her into the world. This might manifest as art, as healing work, as teaching, as activism, as mothering, but whatever form it takes, she knows she's in service to something greater than her individual life. One final aspect of the sacred feminine that the awakened woman has reclaimed. She's learned to value being overdoing. Our culture is obsessed with productivity, achievement, constant activity. But the feminine principle honors the fallow times, the gestational periods, the pauses between breaths. The awakened woman doesn't apologize for rest. She doesn't feel guilty for periods of seeming unproductivity because she understands that these are times when deep inner work is happening, when seeds are germinating in the dark soil of her unconscious, preparing to burst forth when the season is right. She's reclaimed the wisdom that not everything needs to be hurried, forced, or controlled. Some things need to unfold in their own time, according to organic rhythms that can't be rushed. So reflect on this. What is your relationship to the sacred feminine? Have you been living only in your head, disconnected from your body, your cycles, your intuition, the earth? The awakened woman has done the sacred work of coming home to herself as an embodiment of the divine feminine. And in doing so, she's helping heal a wound that's thousands of years old. Now we come to the seventh and final trait, and perhaps the most powerful of all. Trait 7. She lives in service to something greater than herself. The seventh and final trait of the awakened woman is that she lives in service to something greater than herself. This is where everything we've discussed comes together. All the inner work, the shadow integration, the trust and intuition, the embrace of the animus, the confrontation with existential aloneness, the cultivation of authentic power, the reclamation of the sacred feminine, all of it leads to this. A life dedicated to something beyond personal gain or individual fulfillment. Jung called this the ultimate stage of individuation. You don't individuate just to become a more actualized version of yourself. You individuate to become a vessel for the self-capital as to express itself in the world. You become who you truly are so that you can serve the collective evolution of consciousness. The awakened woman has moved beyond ego-driven ambitions. She's no longer asking, "What's in it for me?" She's asking, "What is mine to do? What is trying to be born through me? How can I be of service to the healing and transformation that the world so desperately needs?" This doesn't mean she's selfless in a martyred way. Remember, she's integrated her shadow. She's claimed her power. She knows her worth. She's not self-sacrificing, she's self-offering. There's a crucial difference. Self-sacrifice comes from woundedness and leads to resentment. Self-offering comes from wholeness and leads to fulfillment. The awakened woman has discovered something paradoxical. The more she gives from her authentic overflow, the more fulfilled she becomes. This isn't the exhausting giving of the codependent woman trying to earn love. This is the nourishing giving of a woman who's so full that sharing becomes as natural as breathing. Jung spoke about vocation in the truest sense, a calling that comes from deep within, from the self, summoning you toward your unique destiny. The awakened woman has heard this call. Maybe it didn't come clearly or all at once. Maybe it whispered through her dreams, nudged her through synchronicities, pulled her through longings she couldn't quite name. But she listened, and she followed, even when the path was unclear, even when others thought she was crazy, even when she had to give up security, approval, or comfort to honor this calling. Let me give you examples of what this looks like in real life. The awakened woman might be a teacher who sees her work not as just a job, but as a sacred duty to awaken consciousness in the next generation. Every lesson plan is an offering. Every student interaction is an opportunity for transformation. Or she might be a healer in whatever form that takes, who understands that she's not the one doing the healing. She's creating the conditions for healing to occur, channeling ancient wisdom through her hands, her words, her presence. She might be an artist whose work speaks truths that pierce through the collective numbness, that remind people of their humanity, their divinity, their interconnection. She's not creating for fame or fortune, though those might come. She's creating because these images, these words, these songs are demanding to be born through her. She might be a mother who approaches motherhood as spiritual practice, raising conscious human beings who will contribute to the evolution of our species. She's not trying to create perfect children, she's midwifing unique souls into being, honoring their distinct paths even as she guides them. Or she might be an activist, a leader, an entrepreneur who's building new structures that embody new consciousness. She's not trying to climb existing hierarchies, she's creating alternatives that serve life, justice, beauty, and truth. Whatever form her service takes, the awakened woman recognizes that she's part of a larger story. Jung spoke about the collective, unconscious, the shared psychic, inheritance of all humanity. The awakened woman feels her connection to this vast web. She knows that her healing contributes to collective healing, that her awakening helps awaken others, that her consciousness affects the field of consciousness itself. She's taken responsibility for her piece of the collective work. She's not waiting for someone else to fix the world. She's not paralyzed by the enormity of the challenges we face. She's doing her part, right where she is, with what she has, knowing that millions of others are doing the same. There's also a fierce quality to the awakened woman's service. She's not just sweetness and light. Remember, she's integrated her shadow. She's reclaimed the fierce feminine. So her service includes speaking uncomfortable truths, disrupting harmful systems, refusing to participate in collective delusions, standing for justice even when it's unpopular. Jung warned about the dangers of unconsciousness on a collective level, how groups can become possessed by shadow material, leading to atrocities. He lived through 2 world wars. He saw what happens when consciousness sleeps. The awakened woman is committed to consciousness. She will not sleep through injustice. She will not ignore what's inconvenient. She will not stay silent when silence serves oppression. Her service includes being a voice for the voiceless, a witness to the unseen, a champion for the marginalized. But her activism doesn't come from rage or ego. It comes from love for the earth, for future generations, for the potential that humanity carries. She's fighting for something, not just against something. She's holding a vision of what's possible, not just protesting what's wrong. Jung also spoke about the importance of becoming conscious for the sake of future generations. He understood that unconscious patterns get passed down through families and cultures until someone breaks the cycle. The awakened woman has done this crucial work. She's healed ancestral trauma. She's refused to pass on toxic patterns. She's creating new templates for her children and her children's children. This is profound service, liberating not just herself but her entire lineage, past and future. She's saying, the pain stops here. The unconsciousness ends with me. I will become conscious so that those who come after me have a different inheritance. This is sacred work. This is what Jung meant when he spoke about individuation serving the collective. You don't do this work just for yourself. You do it for everyone whose life you touch, everyone connected to your family tree, everyone who will be influenced by the ripples you create. The awakened woman also understands that service doesn't always look productive or visible. Sometimes her greatest service is simply holding space, maintaining presence, staying conscious in unconscious environments, radiating peace in chaotic spaces. Jung wrote about the importance of individuals who could hold the tension of opposites, who could contain conflicting energies without fragmenting. The awakened woman has developed this capacity. And in a world that's increasingly polarized, increasingly fragmented, this is desperately needed service. She's a bridge between worlds, between the sacred and the mundane, between the ancient and the modern, between the masculine and the feminine, between the personal and the collective. She lives at these intersections, weaving together what's been torn apart. And here's something beautiful. The awakened woman doesn't serve alone. She's part of a global network of awakened souls, men and women who are engaged in this same work. She might not know them personally, but she feels them. She recognizes them when their paths cross. There's a knowing glance, an unspoken understanding. Ah, you're one of us. You're doing the work too. Jung believed that collective transformation begins with individual transformation. That critical mass is reached not through millions of people making small changes, but through smaller numbers of people undergoing profound transformation. The awakened woman is part of this critical mass. Her service is also joyful. This is important. She's not martyring herself. She's not serving from duty or guilt. She's serving from love, and love is its own reward. She experiences deep fulfillment in aligning with her purpose. She knows the difference between exhaustion that comes from living against yourself and the satisfying tiredness that comes from giving your gifts fully. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." The awakened woman has claimed this privilege, and in becoming fully herself, she's become a gift to the world. So ask yourself, what am I here to serve? What wants to be born through me? What is my unique medicine that the world needs? The awakened woman has stopped playing small. She's stopped hiding. She's stepped into her role as a conscious evolutionary agent, and she's living in service to the more beautiful world her heart knows is possible. We've journeyed through 7 profound traits of the awakened woman according to Carl Jung's psychological framework. Let's recap these transformative markers. 1. She has integrated her shadow, self-befriending her darkness and her disowned light. 2. She trusts her intuition above all external authority, reclaiming her ancient knowing. 3. She embraces her animus, the sacred masculine within, achieving inner marriage. 4. She has faced her existential aloneness, discovering her sufficiency and wholeness. 5. She lives from authentic power, not borrowed power, standing in her sovereign authority. 6. She has reclaimed her connection to the sacred, feminine, channeling divine creative force. 7. She lives in service to something greater than herself, becoming a vessel for collective transformation. Now, if you've listened to this entire presentation, you might be feeling overwhelmed. You might be thinking, I'm not there yet. Maybe I'll never get there. Maybe this awakened woman is an impossible ideal. Let me offer you something important. The awakened woman is not a destination. It's a direction. It's not a state you achieve and then maintain perfectly forever. It's a commitment to the ongoing process of becoming. You don't have to embody all 7 traits perfectly to be on this path. You don't have to wait until you've mastered each one before you claim your awakening. The very fact that these traits resonate with you, that something in you recognizes them as true, that's evidence that you're already awakening. Jung's process of individuation is a lifelong journey. There's no finish line. There's no graduation ceremony. There's only the next layer to integrate, the next shadow to befriend, the next level of consciousness to embody. The awakened woman knows this. She's not striving for perfection. She's committing to presence. She's choosing consciousness over comfort. She's saying yes to her own evolution, especially when it's difficult. If you're watching this video, there's a reason. Something called you here. Maybe you're already well along this path and needed confirmation. Maybe you're just beginning and needed direction. Maybe you're in the messy middle and needed encouragement. Wherever you are, you're exactly where you need to be. The world needs awakened women, not perfect women, not women who have it all figured out, but women who are willing to do the inner work, who are committed to consciousness, who refuse to stay small, silent, or asleep. You are one of them. So here's my invitation to you. Choose one trait from today's exploration that calls to you most strongly. Just one. Commit to working with it for the next month. Journal about it. Meditate on it. Notice where you're embodying it and where you're resisting it. Let it work on you. Because here's the truth. Transformation doesn't happen through passive consumption of information. It happens through active engagement with the material of your own life. This video is just a seed. You have to plant it in the soil of your daily experience for it to grow. And remember, you're not doing this alone. You're part of a global awakening of feminine consciousness that's happening right now. Women everywhere are reclaiming their power, their wisdom, their voice, their sacred nature. You're part of this wave. Your awakening contributes to the collective awakening. Carl Jung once wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." The awakened woman has made her choice. She chooses consciousness. She chooses authenticity. She chooses wholeness. She chooses service. She chooses life in all its beauty, terror, mystery, and magnificence. The question is, what do you choose? Thank you for spending this hour with me in this deep exploration. If this resonated with you, please share it with a woman in your life who's on this journey. Leave a comment below sharing which trait spoke to you most deeply. Subscribe to this channel for more content on depth psychology, feminine awakening, and conscious evolution. And most importantly, go live your awakening. The world is waiting for you.